Does August deserve a wrap-up? I'm pretty sure it does. Hello there fellow viewer, my name is Gabriel and today I'm bringing you my August reading wrap-up. You may or may not have noticed that last month there was no wrap-up video. Even though I didn't read that much during July, I did still read. Obviously, I film my wrap-ups towards the end of the month. However, the end of July meant the beginning of August, and the beginning of August meant moving. In the midst of all this craziness, I did not have time to film or edit or upload any type of July wrap-up. I apologize for that, but now August is here, and I have read some books which I want to talk to you about, so let's get started. The first book I finished was Left Behind by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. My mother has been pressuring me into reading more Christian books. She set up a bunch of books on a pile for me so I could read. I had a lot to read during July, but eventually I'd get. So we were moving, and in the midst of the infinite pile of books that my family owns, I found this gem. I just kind of went, Mom, how can you want me to read more Christian books and not show me Left Behind, which is probably the most recognized Christian fiction work there is out there. You may recognize the title from the movie that came out last year with Nicolas Cage. This book series came out during the 90s and I think it was pretty big back then. I decided to pick it up the very first day we moved and I read it surprisingly fast. I was expecting it to take much longer because this is a trade paperback and the font is minuscule. Not only did I read Left Behind faster than I expected, but I just enjoyed it so much more than what I was anticipating. I can kind of describe this book as a retelling of not only the last book in the Bible, but also my personal favorite, Revelation. Revelation tells what we Christians believe is going to happen during the end of the world. I've read it twice now. This book is a modern reimagining of the story. So the rapture takes place, which is when Jesus comes to claim his church, and the people who do not believe are left behind, and this is what happens to them. Do I recommend this book? I really don't actually, because the characters are just the most shallow things that I have ever read. That's how they felt. They didn't feel like humans, they felt like things. The thing that really drove me to continue with the book was the plot, because I really like the story of Revelation. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it would be pretty difficult for a non-Christian to get into this book. That's the simple reason why I don't recommend it. If you're interested in knowing, then I would actually suggest you read Revelation itself, which is shorter and actually pretty interesting. So yes. The second book that I picked up and finished this month was a NetGalley offering from Disney Hyperion called A Whole New World by Liz Braswell. I picked this up the day that I went over to my cousin's house and actually finished during my stay, which is kind of miraculous. A Whole New World had a very interesting synopsis that immediately grabbed me. This new series published by Disney takes each individual Disney movie and adds an unexpected twist to the story. A Whole New World retells Aladdin, but when he jumps into the mouth of that tiger cave thing, Jafar is actually able to get the lamp and Abu doesn't trick him. That's the unexpected twist in this one. The only thing I have to say is that I was expecting a little bit more, especially from something published by Disney. Just like Left Behind, my main problem was with the characters. They just felt so superficial. When given the opportunity to further explore these often shallow characters that we grew up with, it's not very advisable to just mess up. And I know it's a lot of pressure, but since Disney put their faith in this author, I think she would kind of be obliged to come up with a new way of looking at these characters. Something I did really like was the way that she explored the thieves system, the street rat system. I really like that. This book comes out this month, September, I believe. I do recommend you pick it up because it's fun, it's quick, it's actually kind of addicting because you're looking at this story through the mind of one of the Disney characters. So yes, I do plan on continuing with this series. I really do want to know what the next movie they're going to retell with the additional twist. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and obviously after I read this book I went ahead and watched Aladdin because I hadn't done that since I was very young, and I loved it obviously. I forgot to mention that while I was reading Left Behind, I went and watched the first adaptation with Kirk Cameron, and I really liked that movie. I had watched it when I was younger, and I think that is a very faithful adaptation to what is in the book. It's okay, it's not the best movie ever, but it's so much better than the one that was released last year, which I watched after I read Left Behind. Nothing happens in that movie. They disappear. Raymond, which is the pilot, spends the whole effing movie in the plane. It really irritates me what they did with that movie. So, moving on. The third book I finished this month was my reread of Cress by Marissa Meyer, the third book in the Lunar Chronicles, something everyone recognizes. I picked this up for the TBR Invasion readathon last month, and I was able to read 404 pages of this in a day, which is my personal record. I really wanted to finish it, but I couldn't. So I picked it up and read the last 120. I picked it up and I read the last 146 pages. Oh, just what can I say? You have already seen me gush over these books and just adore this character and this plot and this story and this story. These books are amazing. I will not waste any more unnecessary time talking about them. I really suggest you pick these up or read them. Do yourself a favor, please. Moving meant a new library, and I just caved and I went to my new library. I have this adversity towards libraries, and I've actually wanted to film a video about this for a very long time. I lived for 3 years in my previous town, and not once did I go into that library with the intent of borrowing a book, which I really regret, actually. So I went and I found so many books that I'm actually interested in reading, and the next book that I finished is included in that. The third, I'm actually not really counting Cress as a book I finished this month because I read most of it last month and I just finished 100 and something pages. So the third book that I finished this month was The Angel's Game by Carlos Zafón, and just I read The Shadow of the Wind 2 years ago, approximately 2 years ago, and I just completely fell in love with this story. This is the second book in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books trilogy, The Shadow of the Wind being the first book in the trilogy. Again, I just enjoy The Shadow of the Wind so much. It is a beautiful story, wonderfully written, just so intricate, so deep. Even though it's an adult book, I recommend everyone pick that up. It's critically acclaimed globally. It's really worth the read. And so I kind of shrieked when I saw the second book, The Angel's Game, at the library. So obviously I went ahead and picked this up. This was longer than I anticipated, nearly 600 pages, and I read it in 4 days. Thursday, Friday. Yeah. Exactly. I read it in 4 days because it's a Carlos Zafón. Once you start, you can't really dive out of the world. These books are historical fiction set in Barcelona. The Shadow of the Wind is set during 2 separate time periods. This one is set from 1917 to 1945. I am not going to tell you what it is about. I will tell you that this book is it's very different from The Shadow of the Wind. I did not read a synopsis. I did not read anything about it before diving into it because I really wanted to go into it blind. I knew I was going to enjoy it because it was the follow-up, one of my favorite books ever. I ended it and I just realized how different it was. It's different in the way that it's not a solid story. It's just so much more open to suggestion, open to the reader's perspective. What I got from this book might not be what A, B, and C got from this book while reading it. There are so many ways in which you can interpret this book. It's fantastic. I really recommend it. Although I recommend The Shadow of the Wind much, much more as a starting point. And if you really enjoy The Shadow of the Wind, then you can jump into The Angel's Game. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because, again, it's so different. It touched on subjects that I'm not too content with reading, but it's still just amazing. And I recommend the hell out of this author. I shrieked even more when I saw The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Zafón, the third and final book in the trilogy. This follows the same characters that The Shadow of the Wind follows, The Angel's Game being kind of a companion. In the beginning of this book, it is clearly stated that these 3 books work as individuals, even though they are interwebbed and connected through the characters and through the plots. You can read all of these as individuals, which I really recommend you do. I have already started. I am on page 30 and I will definitely be finishing it in a few days' time. And the last book that I still have not finished but plan on doing so today, which is August 31st, is Descent by Katie O'Sullivan, and this was another offering by NetGalley. I actually picked this up right after I finished A Whole New World, but the story just wasn't enticing enough, so I was kind of reading it, then put it down, then read it, and put it down. Quite unlike The Angel's Game, in which I just marathoned the whole book. The book has practically finished, and I can say that I did enjoy it. It is a book about a teenage guy that discovers he is the son of a mermaid that is set to rule the Atlantic, but the oceans are at war, and the different clans, so we have the Pacific, Pacific, we have the Atlantic, we have the Southern Clan, which is the Antarctic Ocean, that kind of thing. They are at war, and the peace treaty demands a marriage between two of the clans. It is very interesting. I really like the take that the author decided to go on the whole mermaid ordeal. It is very, very interesting. Although I felt the book was quite young, the writing and the dialogue just, it was quite infantile. Is that a word? Let us hope so. So childish is what I'm trying to say. And I did enjoy it. I plan on giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I did enjoy it. It wasn't anything special. It's supposed to be quick, but since I wasn't that interested, I didn't really read it with that intensity, but it was still fun. So yes, those are all the books that I read in August. The only book I can say for sure that I'm going to read during September is The Prisoner of Heaven. I also saw at the library something I'm extremely interested in borrowing, which is The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. I have never read a J.K. Rowling book, and just the expectations are sky high. So yes, that is all for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you stay tuned for my next videos. And remember to keep your day an extremely bookish one. Goodbye! Revelations or very unlike the you may recognize them. There are just so many even though they're